What's up, guys? Ethan here, creator of Geek Peak, and I'm with Tyler, the GM of the Instagram page and the co-creator of my page. And today we are here to bring you another AniReview, and this is going to be, I guess, episode 2 for us. Yeah, a second episode.
Yep.
And we're really excited because I finally introduced Tyler to Afro Samurai.
And I can tell you right now, I don't understand how I missed this within my whole adventure in anime, but I am actually quite pleased on what this anime had to offer.
Yeah.
So many aspects that, caught my eye, and I can honestly say within the rating system, my personal rating system, it knocked everything down. Afro Samurai is in top tier. So we're very excited to get this AniReview on, and I hope you enjoy.
First off, I just want to say that the art for Afro Samurai is really something fantastic. We have Gonzo Entertainment. They were the studio behind the animation, and it's gorgeous, and it's probably, I think, their best looking anime, and that was the first thing that stood up. And then, of course, the whole thing with, we're introduced to Afro and his father, a very young Afro Samurai, and immediately, we get this feeling of like dread, and that takes it perfectly into the fight, and that's when we meet Justice for the first time.
And I can tell you right now, honestly, I love Afro. I love all the characters, but honestly, I like Justice. I'm sorry, the law, but with that first fight scene, at first you're like, what's going on here? What's happening?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we get to introduced to, I'm gonna say it, the ranking system in Afro Samurai.
Yeah.
Kind of want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so in Afro Samurai, we're introduced to the 2 headbands, and there's the number 1 headband and the number 2 headband. And in this anime, these 2 headbands, whoever has number 1 is basically considered God. You're untouchable, the best there is out there.
Yeah.
And the only person that can try to take the number 1 headband to become the best is number 2. But we learn early on that Afro, the life of the number 2 is nothing you would want, because it's a life of constant killing, people always coming after you to get the headband, because everybody wants to be a god in this world that they're in. And oh man, it's brutal. It's really, really brutal.
It kind of really takes away from that old little saying that back in grade school, first the worst, second the best.
Yeah.
Second, kind of don't want to be there at this moment if you're in the world of Afro Samurai.
Yeah. And I like it because then we see Afro and his dad. It goes right into the fight with Justice, and it's really amazing because we get some really great music, and we see that Justice isn't like a samurai like Afro's dad, but he's a gunslinger, and he looks like he's been like mutated and like irradiated or some crap. I mean, he looks cool, but he looks really bad and unhealthy. And I was really shocked that you think things are going so well for Afro's dad, and before you know it, Justice has like this hidden card up his sleeve, and we see Afro's dad get decapitated. Not only did Afro see it, but we seeing it too. I honestly felt like I was like there watching it, like with Afro. It was horrifying, and I can't imagine like a little kid seeing that, like your dad's head being chopped off right in front of you. I mean, it's
a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
And you kind of think about, after this AniReview, if you want to watch Afro Samurai, kind of think, he's a gunslinger.
Justice, yeah.
He's just as a gunslinger, but how did Afro's dad get slayed?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that'll come into play later.
Absolutely. So kind of think, keep that in your mind.
Yeah, and so moving along into the first episode, I really liked how we got a really great scene about what Afro is, and in that opening segment where he's ambushed by 20 guys, easily dispatches them. It's awesome. And, we see this great display of power, and it's not until he goes into that bar and everybody, like, before he gets there, they're all talking about, like, who's going to kill him. and it actually causes a bunch of fights between all the people, and they don't even have the headband. So we see how it like brings out this nature in men to just want to like fight. And Afro then comes in, and it kind of just puts everyone back, because they're like, wow, he's actually real, and he's like in this bar. We were just talking about him.
Yeah, he's not a myth or a legend. He's actually a person.
Yep.
Hey, if it's like me saying, Geek Peak CEO is here in Mesa, everybody knows, and they're like, oh, he's actually here.
Yeah, it's very different. And so, he gets into the tussle with the big gentleman who, breaks his lemonade, and then he makes him buy him another one after punching him through a wall, which is freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And, we get that scene. Afro then gets a little tip from the barmaid, and she kind of tells him to take this mountain pass. And, that's when he has the third fight that we're treated to in the first episode. Mm-hmm. The gentleman with the bow, which is great. I love that all these people have all these different weapons, and it's not just like traditional samurais all the time.
Exactly.
So we get this awesome fight scene. We get Samuel L. Jackson saying, "Is that a motherfucking RPG?" Yeah, it's a motherfucking RPG. And it's just Ninja, his side character, who I guess we kind of forgot to introduce, but Ninja follows him around, and it's just a great scene. A lot of good action. Of course, Afro comes out on top, but not totally unscathed, and ends up getting poisoned by that guy's arrow.
Exactly.
So it was really good. I would say episode 1 is such a great intro to the series. It's got a lot going for it, and it really sets the tone for the rest of the show, I thought.
Exactly. And sets the tone and the plot to what's going to come next.
Absolutely. So then episode 2, I was interested in how the it was going to progress, because, we got all those great fight scenes, and the first episode ends with Afro falling off a cliff, kind of a cliffhanger there, literally. And I thought it was really great. We saw Afro as a kid. We see how he's introduced to, the first couple of characters like Ukiku and Gino. Mm-hmm. And he has friends, and it's interesting to see him growing up at this, dojo. And it's great to see that Afro, after like his dad being killed and pretty much being just left alone, he has some friends and learns to kind of like move on a little bit, like he's not so alone. And I really like that in the show, because it's really great character development, and because Afro's a man of such few words, he's very quiet, he lets his sword talk. It's great to see those moments in the show.
Exactly. And what episode 2 kind of brought back, kind of recapping a flashback of what happened after the slaying of the former number 2, his father.
Yeah. Or his father is the number 1.
Did I say that? I am so sorry.
No, you're good, man.
The former owner of the number 1.
Yeah, his dad.
So, that being said, growing up as a little kid, I can't imagine living with that. Yeah. Being on your own, and then being brought in by, a family, or basically kind of like a dojo family.
Yep.
And kind of had to dealing with that, learning how to interact with others.
Yep.
But holding that dark past in between, that dark past.
Yeah.
Dark past, but trying to deal with it, but also trying to be social, because, as Ethan said, Afro is a man of very few words, talks with his sword, and
we actually see him too learning how to use his, he starts learning in this dojo how to use a sword, and so that's where he starts to learn how to kind of defend himself. And I thought it was interesting, the woman that is treating him, we see later on in the episode that she's like actually gathering data on him and using that to inform that group that we're kind of loosely seeing, the Empty Seven.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, that she's treating him and she's gathering these memories, and we're seeing Afro, as a kid in these moments. And the one thing I have to talk about too is, Afro, there's that point where he overhears a bridge, like the conversation on the bridge, and the guy's talking about like the number 2. So Afro finds that guy, and he kills that guy. You remember that in the tent?
Yeah,
he's like with that girl.
Are we still in the flashback?
Yeah, I mean, so just in that episode, he cuts that dude's head off in front of that girl, and it's like the first time that he kills someone, and
that kind of fueled the fire for revenge. Not
hearing about the headband again.
Not necessarily bloodlust, but for that revenge.
Yeah.
There's not living the number 2. It's not something you want to be in there. Let alone you don't want to be in a life of bloodthirst, bloodlust. It's more for in Afro's again revenge.
Yeah, and see, I don't think he kills because he genuinely likes to kill. I think the reason why Afro is so dead set on being, having the number 2 is because he wants a chance to get revenge and redeem his father.
Well, to take out number 1.
And then of course episode 2 ending kind of abruptly. We get Okiku being killed by the group of assassins. Yeah. And Afro, just has to leave everything. Once again, he's like made a friend, and she's taken away, and he's all by himself again. And we see that that's the life of the number 2. So episode 2 was really great. We get way more character development. We see the young Afro, and then the Afro once again as an adult losing someone that he's kind of bonded with. So
it kind of really brings that to that saying, "The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away."
Yeah. Well, in Afro's world, the number 2 takes away.
Yeah.
So
we don't want to live the life of a number 2.
Yes. And so in episode 3, one of the really awesome things that we're introduced to is the Afro droid. And I liked how, even though we see Afro droid, I liked how Afro had that moment in his head where he's talking about his master teaching him about striking from his subconscious and basically, not giving your opponent any idea as to what your movements are going to be. And that's actually how we see Afro overcome the Afro droid. And that fight was just so awesome. Very intense. Again, we got awesome moments of Samuel L. Jackson freaking out and screaming his ninja. So I thought that was really good. And, the battle royale with Afro droid is so immensely satisfying because it's like the first time we see where Afro is actually like worried fighting an opponent.
Challenged.
Yeah, challenged because he, it's reading his every move, and then that's like I said, where that flashback with his master, telling him to not predict, or
not being predictable to your enemies.
So I thought that was really great, and I thought that with Afro doing that, rising above, it was rad. And then of course the bridge explodes, and it's really interesting. We're seeing that the Empty Seven, this clan that's after him, they're really just interested in the number 2, but it's interesting that they are picking this vendetta with a man who is like legendary himself.
Yes.
And really, I think, not to get too far ahead, but man, Afro dealing with the Empty Seven clan, I thought was just brutal. The fight with the older, the bigger guy, the 2 brothers that he fought, killed him with the one sword, impaled him in the head. Just totally brutal. But there was the one brother that survived. You remember that? There's always the headphone guy, and he's just sitting like this, and he's always just bumping music. He never does anything though, so Afro doesn't kill him. And
there's no need.
No, there's no need.
Just walks right past him.
And so I like that, we're really at the end of episode 3 concluding, we get this great part of Afro droid. We see that Afro droid is really not dead yet.
Can I actually make a comment on Afro droid?
Sure.
So kind of going back to even episode 2, Okiku, am I correct?
Yes.
Gathering intel on Afro for the Empty Seven.
Yep.
But we learned, how does Afro droid have the equivalency of the skills of Afro samurai? He looked almost exactly like him. Here it is. Okiku was gathering intel, and when she was killed, they actually got the chip and programmed the Afro droid. So basically, it's a mirror image of his skill.
True.
And then going forward with that, the stuff that he learned from his master.
Yep.
Okay, be unpredictable to your enemies. That's the one leeway that he got to be able to trick his own skills.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. I think that's what separates, and that's why he was triumphant, is because he's not a robot. He doesn't have to follow protocol, and this robot would never have known that memory from Afro, of his master saying, "Don't predict your movements. Be just flow," and that's why he won. And was able to beat the robot. So
exactly, I felt that was a very valid point that we probably had to touch on, because people were saying, "Who's this Afro droid?" how is he almost a carbon copy?
Yeah, and we see, I mean, right off the bat that, you know, Afro Droid, I mean, Afro gets through him and then just cuts through the MT7 clan. And that was just, I mean, that was like almost, Afro is just a monster on the battlefield. It doesn't matter who he's fighting. He is very capable, and, you know, he's not afraid of his enemies. He's not afraid to, like, actually get his hands dirty. So
Just in there a walk in the park.
no, yeah, absolutely. So then in episode 4, I thought Afro, you know, we see him being a teenager, and this is where the story really progresses, and we have one of those moments that was like a what the fuck moment.
Yeah.
And that was when Afro learns that his master, like, this whole time had the number 2 headband
When he was a kid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and had it. And so
That threw me off.
it was really interesting because I thought that part on the hill where they were talking, you know, Afro has to internally make that decision, you know, like, this is my family, this is like these people I've been with, and my life has been pretty peaceful. Mm-hmm. But this guy has the number 2, and if I have the number 2, I can avenge my father. And I think he just, all those feelings flood back, and you know, Afro and his master do square off, and yeah, you know, so his master dying, and then of course Afro fighting Gino on the mountain, I thought was kind of eerily similar, and you know, they were kind of, you know, like I said, similar in that fact with the fight with him on Gino on the mountain, and then the master and him fighting on the hillside. And I mean, that whole scene was brutal. I mean, seeing his friends being like killed, and oh man, it was rough.
Taking your own loved one's life for your benefit, but I kind of feel like his master teaching him all the skills that he have
Yeah.
was to prepare him for that truth that was going to come, that he is the
Yep.
number 2, and that, hey, I've taught you everything, now you got to take it from me.
Yeah.
Like that, kind of like a rite of passage.
Totally.
And then with the whole scene with Gino coming back, I mean, like, we learned that, you know, Gino sees young Afro
Yep.
take the life of his master. Gino disappears. Mm-hmm. Am I correct? He falls off a cliff.
Yeah, he falls off a cliff, and then he's like rebuilt by that weird doctor guy.
He kind of looks like Darth Vader.
Well, I mean, he has that bear helmet on, and so,
Yeah.
you know, we see him, like, you know, kind of being like built back to life and stuff. But it was just that whole scene. I mean, it was just really kind of sad, and the whole thing with Gino. I mean, like, you can kind of sympathize with him as to like why
His purpose.
But I mean, yeah, his purpose. But at the same time, Afro, you know, the revenge that he wants for his dad is so deep that I think Afro just, you know, he's doing it because he wants to, you know, like I said, get justice, you know, for his dad. So I thought that was really interesting. And then, of course, we see at the end, you know, his helmet revealing Gino, and he's like real hideous, and he's like always crying now because of like what happened that day. He like never stopped crying.
It's like an never-ending nightmare.
Yeah, just constantly, you know, always crying. And so I thought it was good. And so I thought with the ending, I was like, man, this is going to be interesting how this is going to end, because I feel like there's so much that can happen in between then and now.
Now, one thing I'd like to conclude with episode 4 was, now we have a new theme. Revenge for revenge. We have 2 stories now. We have Afro's thirst for revenge for number 1, justice. Now we have Gino, who was in Afro's life intimately, witnessing this. I don't want to say a murder. I want to say the slaying of their master. Now it's revenge against samurai for their original master. Revenge for revenge.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, the thing is just Afro, I think, especially when Gino was there, is that it just, Afro's just too powerful. And, you know, unfortunately, their fight had to conclude, and Afro had to go on, and you know, Gino was left behind, you know.
It's kind of like a John Wick thing. Don't mess with a man that has nothing else to live for.
Yeah, and so
a little John Wick Easter egg right there.
Yeah, and so I really like that. And so going into episode 5,
the final episode.
Yeah, the final episode of Afro Samurai is really, it's a great conclusion, I want to say, because
yeah,
I loved the fights. between Afro and his friend Gino. I like the fact that Ninja, we learned is actually like imaginary, and that he's actually disappearing now because Afro put all of his feelings and stuff into him so he wouldn't feel anything, and then he's gone. He fades away, and I was sad to see Ninja go, just because he was so crazy and just a great character,
funny character.
Yeah, totally. And so we see him gone, and then of course we get to see Gino literally, like we talked about briefly in the last part, of him being rebuilt and reborn back to life to go after Afro. And so that part was sad, and it was kind of grotesque, because he just looked so bad, and there's like nothing left of him, and he was just brought back instead of dying and just kind of being put out of his misery. And that kind of just flows right into excuse me, that kind of just goes right into the fact that Afro finally gets to the top of the mountain and enters Justice's lair, and that's where we see Justice, and it's a very creepy area, and I loved the tone that they set.
Well, damn scary, I can tell you that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It almost seems like the end of the world, hell.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like you're in this room of just like this being who's just like just vile and corrupt, and Afro we see is really almost kind of everything he's been through in this fight with Justice. He's pissed, and we see early on that the fight is going on, and you think that it's going to turn similarly like to how you want Afro to win, but then Justice of course pulls that trick card out, and we learn that he has that like third arm, which is how he killed his father. But Afro dodges it, cuts up Justice, and then gets impaled like right after that. But he doesn't get impaled, he's just being held by his hair. And what we get after that is Afro finally getting revenge and cutting Justice into like 35 or 40 just pieces, and finally gets revenge, and he can just like rest easy. And that fight in the conclusion, it was just so satisfying. I really liked it, and I thought it was a great way. And honestly, 5 episodes, it didn't feel like it was necessarily super rushed, the story. It felt like it flowed very well.
Honestly, but definitely, I really loved how they were able to condense such an amazing story in 5 episodes.
Yeah, seriously.
But how about this? When Justice was defeated, what do we learn? The ranking system.
Well, we learned that there are actually more than just the 2 headbands. I think we saw like maybe 7 and 8 or 9, like a handful. And what's interesting is that after Afro gets his revenge and stuff, there's like a title card, and it like it says sometime later, and then we get this really awesome ending shot of Afro walking out, and it's the same place where his father fought Justice in the beginning. So we're being brought back to that same place, and what do we see is we see Gino there, or Kuma the bear, and he's got all these headbands like on him, like he's just wearing them, and then he's also got a cigarette just like hanging out of his mouth, and 2
nasty giant looking cleavers.
Yeah, he's just
katanas.
He's all set to go, and we just see Afro is just like, it's been a while, and
what's gonna happen?
I think the director and the creator were great to let it just kind of sit in your head and let you come up with your own conclusion. But I thought the way they ended Afro Samurai was very, very good. It left me wanting more for sure, but such a smooth ending, and I really liked that Afro and Gino again like squared off, and I would assume that Afro would win just because he's clearly the better swordsman. But yeah, man, what a great series. I'm glad you liked it, because I'm always nervous to show stuff to new people, but I'm glad you liked the show.
And it wasn't just the name Afro Samurai, because you're like, Afro Samurai, you kind of gotta go into anime with an open mind.
Totally.
Because at first I'm sitting here watching the first scene. Oh, it's another samurai scene. Oh, it's a gunslinger.
Yep.
And then the art, the music,
the hip hop vibe. Yeah.
The hip hop vibe, the hip hop culture, which it just makes this anime so unique.
It really does, and I'm glad that you liked the show, because it's one of those rare instances of like Eastern and Western cultures coming together, and there's a lot of really great symbolism. The music is done by the RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan.
Wu-Tang.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really great stuff. if I was gonna rank it, I would give Afro Samurai like 4.5 out of 5 stars. And I only give it that 4.5 because I really wanted more. We did get a full-length film a few years later, which we'll talk about another time. But oh man, it just left me wanting more because the world is so cool, and I think that's why I really like Samurai Champloo a lot too. Is it's kind of that similar hip hop, East meets West kind of vibe. But all in all, I would totally recommend Afro Samurai. You like amazing sword fights, great music, and some bloody sword play. I would definitely check it out.
Those feels too.
It's definitely got some feels. It's definitely got some moments here and there. So it's a great show. I would definitely check it out.
4.5 out of 5. Team Geek Geek signing out.
Yep. And don't forget, by the way, I'm sure you were wondering why we have these Pokemon here, but we've actually... Tyler, you want to go ahead and just talk about these for a second?
Yeah, my buddy makes these crochet Pokemon by hand. He puts a lot of work in here, as you can see.
Gengar right here.
Gengar right here. And who'd have thunk to see a red? At first I was saying he was kind of explaining it as a Gyarados. I'm like, okay, it's gonna be a regular Gyarados. No, everybody, and if anybody is Pokemon fans, and I think it's gold or silver version, they wanted the red Gyarados.
Yes. So
I have caught him. Here he is. We're gonna give you a link in the description.
Yeah,
different
so
ways to contact him.
Look down below if you want to get. We'll put his information down below. If you want to get, are interested in some of these sweet Pokemon, I definitely would do it. It's a great way to support a good local business too. And if you're a big Pokemon fan, I mean, why the hell not? Look how awesome these are.
Yeah.
So thanks for tuning in, guys. Once again, I'm Ethan, and this is Tyler, and we're Geek Peak. Thanks for watching our AniReview, and we'll see you next time.
Signing out.